Mother Knows Death, starring Nicole and Jemmy and Maria QK.
Hi everyone, welcome to Mother Knows Death. On this episode, we are going to be talking about Gwyneth Paltrow's reaction to the California wildfires. Do you guys remember the Octomom? We'll be talking about her. Of course, we're going to get into Luigi Mangione's sex tapes, a circumcision that has gone wrong, and a woman who is raising a doll with her baby. So let's get started with the celebrity news.
All right, first let's get into this story about Gwyneth Paltrow. So she went on a podcast earlier this week to discuss that during the LA wildfires in January, she was drinking pretty much every single night, where normally she only will have a drink once a week. And because of this, her menopause symptoms were getting out of control.
How old is she?
I think she's 52.
Okay, so that's actually amazing because that's the age they say that women go through menopause. Although I feel like I'm already going through it since I've been 44, so I don't know. But when I went to the doctor with all these symptoms I'm having, she was like, "Oh yeah, it's going to be like that for like this for 10 years." So I was like, "Oh, cool."
Yeah, really
Awesome.
nice. It's like when you go to the neurologist for migraines and they're like, well, unfortunately, you're just going to have this till you have menopause. And I'm like, cool, I'm 23 at this appointment. So it's at least the next
You know what
2 to
though?
3 decades.
There was a point where I was going to the migraine doctor and they were telling me that, and it seemed really far away, and now it's here, and it didn't really take that long to get here. So
That's great.
it's coming for you. But some of the symptoms, for those of you who don't know, I'm sure many of you listening go through this stuff with the hot flashes, night sweats, loss of bladder control. And the mood changes are, I just see these hilarious memes on Instagram that are like, do you hate your husband? Well, maybe you don't. Maybe it's just menopause. It's just fucking so funny. But one of them is forgetfulness and brain fog, which is a real thing. And it was really funny because when we were at Con, I was talking to Kelly before we were getting ready to go on stage. And I said to her, I swear to God, I don't know what's going on with me, but sometimes I'll just be talking and I just literally forget what I'm talking about. And I go blank. And she's like, how old are you? And I was like 45 or 44, however I was at the time. And then she said, oh, yeah. She's like, it's this menopause thing. And so when I went right on stage, I said that before I even started my lecture. I was like, if I just start looking like I have this weird blank stare and I totally forgot my train of thought, like, that's why. Sorry, I'm just having this thing going on right now. So she really helped me out with that, which was good to let you know that it's normal. But I guess what happened was during the wildfires, Gwyneth Paltrow was getting so stressed out, which I don't think it directly affected her because at the time I think she was living in Brentwood, although I think there was some talk that there were fires getting close.
Her house was fine, though.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm sorry, you grow up in that city and you're just looking at it burn down. It's devastating to everybody watching it. I mean, especially people that are directly affected, but it's upsetting to everyone, right?
No, of course.
So she said she started drinking a lot, like every night. She went from being a regular like once a week drinker to now it was every night to just try to get through the stress. And believe it or not, alcohol can exacerbate menopause symptoms, and that's exactly what happened to her.
It just sucks too, because especially if you've gone a couple years and been able to keep it at bay, to just like not even think about it and have a couple drinks and have them pop up more regularly, and then it's like you have this extremely stressful event going on in your life, and that you're just trying to do, not that we certainly don't encourage drinking every day, but we understand a little bit more in these situations. And then the only type of stress release you have is now making your menopause symptoms get worse.
Yeah, and like menopause symptoms just suck. It's the not sleeping thing and the heat flashes at night is because like if you don't sleep, it ruins your whole entire day. It's the central thing to keep you really mentally sound and functioning throughout the day. So that's where it starts. So I can't imagine, but there's other more long-term things that alcohol use can make worse too. Like it could increase the risk of osteoporosis and heart disease even more. And also, one thing I noticed that just happened this year was that I'm starting to get like weird fat on my abdomen, like on the sides where I didn't ever have it before. And that's a thing that your waist all of a sudden becomes not a waist anymore. even though I go on the scale and I weigh the same amount, my body shape is just changing. And so obviously if you drink alcohol and stuff, that helps you, that will prevent you from keeping your normal weight even more. It might change your body shape even more. So there's lots of different negatives to it.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to the story about Octomom. So back in 2009, Octomom, aka Nadia Solman, she already had 6 kids and she went to a fertility doctor saying she was hoping to have, you know, at least one more child. So she gets these fertility treatments done, and I guess the standard practice in IVF is they'll put 2 embryos in you, but this doctor told her he put 6. In reality, he put 12 embryos inside of her, and she became pregnant with 8 babies, hence the nickname Octomom. So now she has this docuseries and this biopic coming out with Lifetime this weekend, and she's doing an interview saying she definitely doesn't have any regrets about now having 14 children, but she does wish that she would have sued the fertility doctor.
All right, let's try to break this down exactly what happened, because I remember it happening, but then I thought, like, didn't something happen with her? And I looked it up, and yes, so let's start from the beginning. It seems like she had a husband and they had these 6 kids. All of her kids were from IVF. When she had these 6 kids, apparently she had a bunch of her embryos frozen, and instead of using those frozen embryos that she had, they were still giving her medications and hormone therapy to try to make an embryo again. So she wasn't using the frozen ones, she was using these newly created ones. So I guess there was a bunch of these frozen embryos sitting aside that had to be used. And she thought, for whatever reason, that there were 6 of them left and they were going to get destroyed, and she didn't want to think about them getting destroyed. So she had went to that doctor and said, can you put these all inside me? Which he said, yes. So I'm thinking that there were more than 6, because otherwise, where did the other extra ones come from? I'm not really sure. But regardless, like, this guy that was the doctor that was doing the IVF on her, he lost his license because of this, which is a good thing, because this is completely irresponsible. But when she decided she wanted to have these 6 embryos put inside of her, which ended up being 12, as Maria said, she wasn't married to this guy anymore. So she was planning on having a baby on top of the 6 ones that she already has, at least one baby. So what happens is when you're trying to have a baby, sometimes they put in more, 2 or 3, in the hopes that one will take. But sometimes, as we know, twins could happen, triplets could happen. One of the eggs could split and cause twins. So there's just like lots of different things that could happen. And in this case, they put in 12 and 8 of them ended up taking. And she decided that she was going to keep all of them. Now, sometimes if a woman gets IVF and gets pregnant with every embryo, she could decide to do something called selective termination, which is essentially aborting one of them or 2 of them out. Just because, I mean, there's lots of reasons. Women don't want to take care of 3 babies. And there's lots of things that we could debate on if that's right or wrong.
Well, it
but
could be a safety risk too.
It's a safety risk for multiple births, but there's a lot of ethical things that go with that, which we're not going to talk about right now. But for whatever reason, she was like, I'm going to do this. And she did, and she successfully carried 8 babies and had them. It was the first time it was ever documented. And of course, this is going to be a major news story. Now, the thing that's really fucked up about this is that regardless of her, in my opinion, this is terrible decision making and this doctor making terrible decisions. She went to the hospital, and the hospital where she gave birth gave her name and the story to the press, which is so fucked up. So now this is where Octomom came from. It doesn't appear that she was like, hey, look at me. It was like something she was doing, and her information was given to the press without her consent. So
That's a major HIPAA violation, right?
It is. So she sued the hospital and was able to be successful with that. but she's forever branded Octomom, and I remember it being this big thing. And but there were people that were giving her death threats and shit because they're like, how are you going to afford to take care of all these babies? And it didn't really seem like she really had any kind of career or was independently wealthy. So from the time that she did this up until recently, she's had lots of financial problems, filed bankruptcy. She even did porn at some point. I don't know if you remember that, to make money, because she was saying, and this was only a couple, I think it was 2017, she was saying that it was costing her $5,000 a month to take care of her kids, but she only got $1,500 from the government for food stamps, so she needed to supplement the income. And that's kind of the shit that people were getting pissed off about, because it's like, if you can't afford to take care of your kids, why are you having more? But like, you could say that about so many people, and there can't really be laws to say you could have this many kids, what, according to how much money you make or whatever. But
Yeah. Because
so
also she wasn't, yes, she was intending on having at least 7 children, but she wasn't intending to have 14 children. And I guess there is some risk where there could have been additional babies, but I don't think she truly thought she was going to be pregnant with 8 children when she went in for IVF that time.
well, yeah. And I mean, like I said, the whole ethics of that is like, if you're walking in and you know they're putting those in, there's a chance of that. But obviously this guy, I mean, this guy could have really killed her. I mean,
Yeah.
six would have been abuse as it is. So she's lucky she survived that, and then she kept the babies, and they all survived it too. But I mean, that was a huge strain on her health and everything. So he lost his license, luckily, and now she was saying that she would want to sue him. I don't really know if she could have. I mean, I guess she could have sued him for putting 12 in, but she did consent to putting 6 in. So what's the difference at this point if you have 6 babies or 8 babies? Like, it's a lot. Um, and just
Yeah.
thinking, like, she's I think she's my age, right? Or a little bit younger than me, or she's 45-ish. She's around my age or something. And she has like 14 kids, which is just, I can't even believe it.
So I wonder if her ex-husband had signed off on her using the embryos. I'm really curious about this because so many couples, especially wealthier couples today, are making embryos in their early 30s and then, you know, not necessarily using all of them, or they'll use one and then they have some in storage. So I don't know if you know this, but Sofia Vergara, the actress, she had embryos with her ex, and after they got divorced or split up or broke up, whatever, he wanted to go forward and use the embryos with the surrogate. And she was like, no, like, these are half my babies, and I don't want to do that. And I don't want children out there that I didn't consent to being in this world. And she sued him and she won.
Yeah, and I think that she has every right to. And I don't know, because that's what, the way that all of the articles are written, she filed for divorce and went through divorce within a year of getting pregnant, and it said that she didn't want them to get destroyed. So I'm not sure if she like quick and did it before the guy had a chance to get them destroyed. But I mean, technically, isn't he legally responsible for those children?
Well, I think that's why the conversation comes up, but I think it's difficult because in the grand scheme of things, it's a newer technology we have, having IVF, even though it's been around for a couple decades. And then you have this argument where, like, in Sofia Vergara's case, for example, she has a right to not want the embryos to become full-blown babies because they're 50% her babies. But what about her ex having 50% responsibility and wanting them to become children? You know what I mean? It's a 50-50 split. So,
Well, I mean, can't in theory he just have other kids?
well, yeah, of course.
I mean,
but
like, it's kind of, I just think it's kind of weird if you're divorced and you want to have babies with the ex. It's just like, why?
no, I'm not defending him at all. Like, I think she's in the right, and I think if you make that decision as a couple together, you need to be 100% on board with what happens afterward.
Yeah, it is a very interesting legal thing. But I just still can't wrap my brain around. I actually wish I worked at the hospital where that happened, because I would love to see the placentas of what was happening in there, and just curious from a medical perspective. I mean, did you ever see the pictures of her belly when she was pregnant? out of control.
Yeah, it looks like prosthetic. It doesn't even look real.
Yeah, it looks like it's a doctored photo. It really is crazy. So it's kind of remarkable that she was able to even pull that off. The whole thing is, I think the kids are 10 or 11 now.
No,
And
they're 16.
Oh, they're 16?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just thinking like what year? Yeah, like do you want, I mean, now my kids are great at their age. They're 10 and 11, but imagine having, well, even teenagers. Imagine having 8 teenagers at the same time. But think about when they were babies and when they were toddlers. I mean, there was a point that she checked herself into this rehab center. I don't think she was doing drugs or anything. It was just for like exhaustion and anxiety. And like, duh. I mean, and especially she was a single mom. So and she doesn't, it's not like she's a multimillionaire that she could pay all these people to help her out. So,
I am curious too why they kept having her make fresh embryos, because storing existing embryos is so expensive. And why wouldn't you want to use the ones you already know are successful?
I'm not sure that was done to her consent or something. I just really don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it's a messy story.
You know how like you always look this shit up and it's like they don't answer every question and you're like, I don't know. The whole story I just pieced it together. Okay, this was the year she was married. She had the kids with that guy. This is the year she got divorced. Like I tried to figure it out, but nobody actually just writes it out step by step, and that's what we all want to know, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, true crime. This is a story everyone's talking about online.
New weird twist in the Luigi Mangione case is that a friend came forward and said that he made at least over 20 sex tapes.
So where are these sex tapes?
I'm curious about that as well, and I think, we've talked about before how there's just a lot of fanfare because he's considered a very attractive person, and I just think this is fueling that with his supporters. I read he's been getting sent a lot of nude pictures while he's been in jail.
Jesus Christ. This is like the weirdest fucking phenomenon ever. When they were saying outside of the courtroom that there were women outside screaming like it was the Beatles. Like, what is happening right now?
Yeah.
It's like, it's kind of just culturally, it's just so weird. I know that back in the day that there were women that thought that Ted Bundy was hot, which he wasn't. I know you always try to argue with me about this and say by 1970s standards, he looked no, he was never handsome, ever. I'm sorry.
I'm going to stick by my argument that he was handsome by 1970. Nobody is saying he's like celebrity superstar hot. He was a decent looking average man.
Did you ever see a picture of Elvis? Like there's plenty of men that were hot in that day that you could still appreciate and be like
celebrity.
They were
He was a normal person.
Yeah, no. What's different? What's different about men now than before?
Because even back then they had VIP treatment. Like if they had pimples, they had somebody telling them how to take care of them. They were dressed really well. They did their hair nice.
Did you? No.
Yes. All right. Anyway, so
well, then, but the thing is that in this case, and I've said this before, that I think that Luigi Mangione is a fine specimen. I will not argue with that. Like Nancy Grace is always like, who would think he's attractive? And I'm like, well, I do actually, but I don't think what he did was attractive at all. But like, come on, let's talk about that video I sent you on Instagram.
Oh my god! Wait, which one?
The one of, so this guy did this hilarious. I wish we could find. Actually, we could probably find it in our messages. This guy did this thing making fun of Luigi Mangione, saying that he like purposely goes into court looking like America's Next Top Model.
Yeah.
And he was like dressed up with the sweater on and the shoes and stuff and taking like glam shots. It just was so funny because it's true. Like this guy. He's calculated and manipulative, and he knows exactly what he's doing. And I bet if you want to go as far as saying, because obviously he didn't just shoot this guy in self-defense. He planned this murder for a long time, making a 3D gun and everything that went into this. Do you think it's possible that he planned making these sex tapes that would come out after he was incarcerated?
I mean, yeah, I think he's an incredibly intelligent person based on information we know so far. Obviously the trial still has to come out. I feel like when he's at trial, it's going to further reveal how smart he was in planning this whole attack in general. And yeah, I think he knows he's attractive. I think, the friend was trying to suggest that he liked to be watched and liked being oogled after and everything. So, like,
Well, the
I think
biggest
it's a
thing to
definite
take from this
possibility.
is that people that have seen the videos are like, this isn't some grainy home video. This was
High level porn
high level,
production.
calculated, like he wanted it to look a certain way. And that is interesting to me because if you were just making that to look at yourself or show between your friends, like why would you go through all of that?
But at the same time, the friends were saying that he was allegedly really scared of having a porn addiction and thought that watching too much porn could prevent you from having a good real life connection with somebody. So it's weird that you would have that fear that people allegedly know about, and then you would be going making these high level production videos. And of course, everybody's like, well, who's in the videos with him? But they're saying that the girls might be afraid to come forward because they don't want to get wrapped up in this case, probably thinking they're just having hot sex with a hot guy. And now all of a sudden it's like the biggest trial of the year. And they don't want to be wrapped into it and getting death threats when they were just like
I don't
trying
know
to
if they'll
hook up
get
with
death
someone.
threats. They'll probably be like the most admired women in the world right
No,
now.
they will from some people. I mean, have you met anybody? Anytime Octomom was
Anybody
getting
on
death
the
threats.
internet. I know.
It's
I
ridiculous.
was thinking that, like, listen, I'm with the Octomom. I'm like, I look at her and I'm just kind of like, dude, that if you can't afford to even have the 6 kids you're having, why are you having more? Like, I think that way, right? But like, there's
They
where
must-
it ends. I don't even care. I wouldn't even care to make a phone call to my local congressperson to complain about it. Like, it's. Do you know how much money is wasted on things like that every single day? It's like, what's another couple $100 a month as far as I'm concerned. I don't know who would ever like make death threats over that. It's like worry about your own life kind of thing. I don't know.
She must have had money at some point because do you know how expensive IVF is? And nearly no insurance policy covers
Well,
it.
clearly this guy is like not so legit, right? So maybe she was getting a discount or something.
Yeah, or maybe he was trying to do experimental treatments and she got it for free. I don't know, but I was the whole time I'm thinking about this, I'm like, all of her kids were conceived via IVF. I'm like, it was 2009, but it was still expensive back then. So let's say it's like 10 grand per kid back then. That's a lot of money to have children.
Well, maybe the dude had money or something. I don't know.
I
But
don't know.
getting back to Luigi, I'm like really looking forward to a forensic psychologist or psychiatrist like going on the stand and talking about him.
I thought you were going to
because
say you're really looking forward to the tapes coming to light.
Oh, I want to actually. I was going to search for them later. I was wondering if that's why I asked you where they were because I was going to go to like Reddit right after this and look them up. No. But like I am interested cuz he has like this weird you're saying like he's doing porn but then he's scared about porn. He has money and has no connection to the healthcare field, but then he did this act. It's just like a very interesting way that he acts. So I am looking forward to getting into the mind of Luigi.
This episode is brought to you by The Gross Room.
Guys, we told you last week that we finally wrote up our bestiality high profile death dissection, which is just truly one of the most disturbing ones. I was thinking like I'm going to make this subcategory of just like perverse things that people are really interested in learning about but don't want to Google them. And of course, why not us do it? Because just add it to the list of our insane Google searches. But the bestiality one, the other one is cannibalism. That one's like a really, really crazy one. The inbreeding one, that one's also really crazy. So those ones are great. Check them out. We are working right now on Ruby Frank. I don't know, like we always say, if some, let's say for example, Gene Hackman's information comes out now, like that takes precedence over that in my opinion. So we might bump that, but we are working on a Ruby Frank one. So for those of you listening who want to read our dissection on that, you want to what is the show that you've been watching?
I think the Hulu documentary is called The Devil in the Family. It just came out, but it's like
on Hulu.
It's front page on Hulu, but I am deep in the research on this one and I am repulsed and disgusted. I had no idea how horrific this really was. Of course, they're blaming COVID and the pandemic and their religion. It's like, you will not even believe where this goes. And I'm sorry, but like the husband, he's guilty too. We'll get into
I've
that in the
thought
breakdown.
I've thought that from the beginning too. So, and just to summarize that case really quick for those of you who aren't familiar, it was this woman who was a YouTube influencer that was abusing her kids. I mean, there's a lot more to the story,
Yeah, like
obviously.
that's the
She was
simple
also like,
facts, but
yeah,
oh
she
my
was
god.
also like a family influencer. It's not like she was doing something else. It was like she was trying to tell other people how to be a good parent, and then it's really disturbing. We also have a really good post on what happens when you have sex too soon after surgery, so check out the Gross Room.
Head over to thegrossroom.com for more info and to sign up.
Okay, let's get into medical news.
A new study has come out and revealed that bacterial vaginosis can be passed to women by male sexual partners.
Okay, so this is really interesting information, actually. I think that I wanted to talk about this because most of you have probably had BV at some point in your life just because you're a woman, you have a vagina, you have sex, like this, things could happen, right? And it, unfortunately, it could cause an unpleasant smell. Sometimes they say it's like a fishy smelling discharge. And it also could cause some problems with miscarriage, premature birth, and infertility. So it is important, if you think that you have that going on, to go to the doctor and get it checked, because you could just get antibiotics to help it. But unfortunately, a lot of women have this and they don't even know it because they don't get any of those symptoms. Like, obviously, if you're smelling something fishy down there, you're going to usually go to the doctor and get it taken care of. But there might be other things that you're kind of like, it's a little red or itchy, but you're not really sure. So what happens is that there's this normal bacteria that's down there, and it's a fine balance. And this is why they always say the vagina is like a self-cleaning oven. Don't touch it. Don't put douche in it, especially even perfumes or anything. You don't want to mess up that balance, because if you do, then the good bacteria becomes less and the bad bacteria becomes more, and that causes bacterial vaginosis. So in the past, they've said even though having sex is considered a risk factor for bacterial vaginosis, they've never said that it's a sexually transmitted infection. They just act like it's on the woman alone. And now they did this study where they took two groups of monogamous heterosexual couples that had bacterial vaginosis. So there was 81 women and men in one group, 83 women and men in the other group. One group, both the couple, the woman and the man, was given oral and topical antibiotics. And in the other group, it was only the women given the antibiotics. So this is like a pretty large group of people to be able to monitor what's going on with this. And they found that the women, where the men and the women were both being treated, there was less of a reoccurrence of bacterial vaginosis, like a significant amount less. And the women also significantly took a longer time to get BV again. So they're saying, okay, if you get BV, you really should get your partner to get tested for it. Well, I don't know if they would even need to get tested for it, just treated for it, and that would make it less likely for it to reoccur. I think I'm sure they'll do more studies before they make this word, but this is really important because people have issues with this, and you're like, oh, cool, the whole time if the guy just got treated too. It just makes sense, because you're having sex, you could pass it back and forth to each other. You could do the same thing with a yeast infection, so it just kind of makes sense. I'm surprised it's taken this long, honestly.
Yeah, I was going to say that because it's pretty common, right? I mean, this article is saying that it could affect up to 1/3 of reproductive age women. That's a lot.
It's common, but like most women don't want to sit there and be like, my vag smells like fish, so.
Well, I was just about to ask you this too. Like when they're conducting a study like this, they're putting an ad out there, obviously, and being like, we're doing this study, who wants to participate?
It is very interesting. I'm thinking that, so let's say you go to the gynecologist and you say you get diagnosed with BV. It might be the gynecologist can approach the patient and say, hey, we're doing a study. Would you be interested in taking part in it? That's
Okay.
because both the women in both cases were treated throughout the study. So you're getting treated anyway. So they would say, because they'll pay. I mean, sometimes it's good. They'll say, hey, if you and your husband come in once a week and you just document this stuff, we'll pay you a couple $100. Like, people want to do it. There's no harm in it if people want to do it. So that's probably how they're getting the patients, is when they're getting diagnosed. I'm assuming they might have ads out too, but see, when they're doing studies like that, they want to control the medications and stuff. So if you just find this ad and you're like, oh, I've been on antibiotics for 2 days from this doctor, like they might want it all under one roof, because that's how, you get legitimacy with the study and everything. So I'm not exactly sure how they, because it's a lot of people that they found,
Yeah, that's
100
what
and yeah, over
that's what I'm like, how are
160.
they even recruiting these
Yeah.
people?
Well, because women get it all the time. It's the way it is. You could have it um uh, like a lot of times they say it's just from like multiple sexual partners and this and that, and it's like we used to call it in school. This is really funny. When we were going to PA school, one of my classmates started having sex with this new guy, and then she was like, oh my god, I'm getting like that weird ish, and then we were all talking about it one day, and we called it NC, or new cock. We used to be like NC, and in fact we called her boyfriend, and who's now her husband at the time, we called him NC like the entire time we were in school. It was so
Wow.
funny. But it was because it's like a thing, like any woman could sit there and say like you get like a little bit different down there when you're introducing new things. So um I think it's really cool, and I guess it's technically, I still wouldn't consider it to be like a sexually transmitted infection, because they still have to do studies to make sure that if a guy is having sex outside of the relationship and then bringing it back and things like that, I mean, I don't see that it would be any different, but now it's proven that it's going back and forth, which is interesting.
Yeah. All right. In Somalia, this boy was taken to get a circumcision. He was only 7 days old. And this is a common practice in East Africa, so not unusual that he be getting it done. But the surgeon that they hired to do this was pretty inexperienced. He ended up botching the procedure, and then the boy's penis had to be amputated as a result.
God, I hate hearing this. It's so sad.
Well, it's just preventable, you know?
It is. I mean, you have to think they do. I mean, I'm anti-circumcision. I wouldn't get it done if I had a boy, but I know that people do. I know people do it for religious reasons, and it's done all the time with no complications at all. Um, in this case, this is and not to say that that couldn't happen in America, because it surely could, but in this case, he was using a cautery tool to do it, and that is not recommended to be used just because a baby has like this very, very sensitive, immature skin that is it's just very fragile and easy to damage. So a cautery tool is what we call like a hot knife. It uses heat to cut the skin instead of actual like a cold knife, which would be a scalpel blade. Um, and unfortunately, he burned the skin and the head of the penis so bad that it had to be removed. It killed the tip of his penis. It turned black, and he had to have it amputated. And then he had to further keep getting amputations. It just so terrible. And then it got to the point where it was starting to get so scarred up and stuff. They had to put a catheter inside of his urethra to make sure his urethra didn't close shut. And luckily they were able to prevent any further narrowing of that, but he's essentially left looking like a female at this point. He has no penis. And just imagine being a parent of a child and having to go through that. Not that it's everything, but it's definitely a lot of things. So it's just a lot to go through. And we didn't, so we had a case, I don't know if we reported on this podcast or when we were doing it in the gross room, but there was another case of a circumcision happening, but that was in Florida. Remember, it was done in by some doctor who,
I think it was on here.
I feel like it was too. And the practice had to end up paying the family $100 million because their son had to get his penis amputated.
I feel like it was because I feel like the clip we posted was like really controversial. Like people were freaking out.
And it was, so that happened back in 2021. Yeah, because remember that guy was a gynecologist and he just had a patient that died after childbirth. And then he did this, I believe he did it at home or something. It was like a really weird thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, we talked about that on here. We have couple cases in the gross room too of ritual ones, circumcisions on boys as well as female circumcisions. So if you just go to the grocery room and type in circumcision, you could see all of those cases as well. And I think it's more disturbing to see the pictures of it because you're just like, oh my God, the family, the kids, it's just like the life is just so hard. Just having like another thing on top of it is just terrible.
Yeah. All right. In the UK, this woman gave birth to a baby girl when she was 17 years old. And as her baby started getting older, she realized she really missed the infant phase. So that's when she decided to buy a baby doll and raise the real baby and the baby doll together.
This is just so weird. I'm like really interested in it. This whole entire culture of these reborn dolls. They're like 25 grand sometimes.
I know.
That to me is outrageous. I mean, they look really good. And if somebody's making them, they definitely should be charging that much money for them because apparently they feel real. Like like they just look like real humans and feel like real humans. But remember we had a story back in September when we were talking about a woman that had these dolls and would like breastfeed them?
Yeah, and they said that's pretty common in the community. And you know, you must be asking, like, what is the purpose of a $25,000 baby doll? Most commonly, it's bought by women who experience like a baby that dies, or they have miscarriages, or they're dealing with infertility or something.
Or like they said in the article as well that women are buying these dolls because they simply cannot afford to have real children now. Like, and listen, I get that because kids cost a shit ton of money, but
$25,000 for a doll compared to raising a kid. I mean, I'm not saying that having children is not expensive, and it's definitely like
you could do it a lot cheaper than if you had your kid and you were at home and you were feeding them like cheaper food and sending them to public school and things like that. It would take a while to add up to $25,000, really.
That's what I'm saying. And like your
if
financial
you're breastfeed,
situation
like if you
changes over
breastfeed the kid for
time.
the first 2 years and like they're just eating, they don't really eat that much. Like my kids are like 10 and 11, they still don't really eat that much. They could just, they could share an adult portion for themselves and stuff. I mean, yeah, like it definitely costs money to have kids, but if you're putting out that much for a fake doll and you're not getting it in return, like what children bring to you, I don't know. I just think I just think this is fucking weird.
I think it's unusual. I'm not gonna...
I even think it's weird if you have a loss. I just think like whatever, people could do them. I just personally think it's like it's just a little weird to me.
Yeah, and they were asking
like sticking your tit in a doll's mouth.
No, that's taking it too far. I understand getting the doll made if you have... I can't even imagine the tragedy of having a baby that dies or having a miscarriage. I really can't imagine it. I understand. I'm more
either,
forgiving
like,
in that situation.
I just can't see how that really helps.
Sticking your tit in a doll is just like inappropriate and crossing a line. I can't be on board with that. And then they were asking her if they thought her real child was going to be jealous of the baby. And she was like, well, obviously I prioritize the time with the real child. Why did you even get the baby doll? It's so weird. I don't know. It is
weird. And listen, I get that. Like, I look back at pictures of the kids when they were babies and I'm like, oh, they were so cute. And I'm never going to get that time back. But I never, like, feel like I need to get it back, though, that much.
No, I mean,
that's like why life cycles on and you have grandkids or your friends have kids or whatever. Like,
it's different with you too, because when I eventually have kids, you'll still be pretty young, so like you'll have access to a baby pretty much. Like,
it's gonna be the best baby because I could give it back.
Exactly. All right, let's move on to questions of the day. Every Friday at the @MotherKnowsDeath Instagram account, you guys can head over to our story and ask us a question. First, how frequent have you seen metastatic breast cancer in autopsy? Is it a death sentence?
So believe it or not, I haven't seen it a whole lot in autopsy because a lot of the times people know their family member is having stage 4 cancer and they just don't want to get an autopsy because they know why they died. So it's crazy because you would think so many people die from this, but we don't do a lot of autopsy on stage 4 cancers. Not that I haven't seen it because I surely have, but just not a lot. I have, however, seen a lot of biopsies, hip bones and things like that have metastatic cancer, lymph nodes and things like that, even in the brain. So it definitely does happen, and there's a need for it in the surgical pathology department for sure. Um, Breast cancer, right now, they're saying that the 5-year survival rate with stage 4 cancer is 25 to 32%. So that's a horrible percentage if you have stage 4 breast cancer, but it's also I would say it's pretty high considering stage 4 is the end. It can't get any worse. So they have a lot of treatment. I think one of the benefits to having, if there is a benefit to having breast cancer, is it's the most researched and funded cancer ever. So I just think that the treatments and the way that they're discovering how the genes are working with everything, and the hormones and the drugs that they're able to give people are increasing people's lives, because it used to be a death sentence, but now it's people are living with it. So if that's happening with you, I'm sorry, but I think that that's still a good percentage that it leaves hope.
All right, 2. As a PA, do you ever have to assist with organ transplant retrieval and or prep?
So organ transplants, retrieval, not really. So in a PA in the hospital, I was doing surgical pathology and autopsy. So in surgical pathology, we're very involved with the process of organ donation, because we have to process the biopsies to make sure the organs are good enough to transplant into people. So as far as a PA in surgical pathology, we're very involved with that. We don't do the especially live procurement, because that's done on the floor. That's not done in the morgue. There's been times where they come and do like cornea retrieval and things like that, but that's not anything that we do, that at least where I've worked, that the people that the PAs that are doing the autopsies would do. I've had some instances where PA friends of mine have had side gigs working for organ retrieval services like that, but that's another company or another process that usually comes in before the autopsy gets done to take corneas, for example, like that. But I have done autopsies where people have had their donated organs and bones and skin. So sometimes you'll look at a patient and their whole entire piece of skin off of their back is missing because they donated their skin, or there's PVC pipes in their legs because their bones were donated. But that's not anything that we actually do. We just see the after effects of it.
All right, last. What is your cat's name, and do I have any pets? I do not have any pets.
My cat's name is Thumbkin because she has thumbs.
She's
polydactyly, yeah.
Any animal that has gone through the Mangione household has had some type of medical name. Starting with our black cat, Rudy.
Yeah, Rudy was good, but we had to get rid of him because of the apartment, unfortunately.
Short for Rudolph Ludwig Virchow.
He was a cute cat.
Yeah, and then you had the lizard. What was the lizard's name? Was Cirrhosis. Yeah, the cat's name's Thumbkin. But we really just call her Kitty.
Yeah, we call her Baby Kitty.
But yeah, and I don't have pets, and I never will. So
Maria's not an animal person. I'm not really either. Like, just some animals and just one. Although I just recently adopted a cat. I don't know if I told you guys this story. I adopted a cat, maybe, what was it, 6 months ago now, or more in the summer. It was a year ago now, probably, right? A year ago. And she was a special needs cat. She was so cute. She was missing an eye and a leg, but she came from a history of abuse, which was very clear once she started living in our house. And she was fine with us. We had her separated. We did the whole, I watched the Jackson Galaxy videos and did the whole separation for a month between them and slowly introduced them and everything. But, and I thought, just making an assumption beforehand, that my cat was going to be the one that was like, you're in my territory. Yes, like, you're in my territory. Who the F are you? I'm going to, like, scratch your eyes out. And this cat terrorized my cat so bad. I couldn't even believe it, because she was so, like, sweet and innocent and quiet, and just sat in the same spot all day. And then we would just like walk out of the room or something, and she chased my cat and like attacked her, beat the crap out of her. And I would, I called everybody at the adoption place and just tried to figure it out. And it became a point that my cat was becoming stressed from it. She stopped eating and she lost some weight, and her hair, it just, and I just was like, I'm sorry, she was here first. Like, I can't do this anymore. I felt terrible about that, but I'm hoping that cause her foster mom, really seemed like she was attached to her. She had her for like 2 years or something. So I hope that she just went back with her and stayed with her, because the cat was living with the foster mom, and there was dogs in the house, and she was completely fine with that. And I don't know, like, cat psychology and stuff. I just don't particularly think that our kitty was curious, right? Like, she seemed to be trying to make friends.
Yeah, I definitely thought Thumpkin was going to be the aggressor too, but then when you saw the fight starting to happen, it was pretty bad. Like, the other cat, Peggy, her name was, she would hide under the couch and like full-blown attack Thumpkin when she was just trying to walk by, and it just got bad.
And it was stressing Peggy out too. She was like losing chunks of her hair.
And you don't have to
and
take
that was
a house.
We were only doing it really because I think we had them separated for a while, almost a month, and then we started introducing them, and it was like it just wasn't happening. Like,
and you don't have the type of house where they could have just like lived in separate areas. Your house is small and everything's on top of each other. It just
and
was
I was
impossible.
Scared. Like, we're home all the time mostly, but I was scared that if I left the house that they were going to really hurt each other, and that's not cool to put them in a stressful life like that. So
yeah. Well, if you guys have a story, please submit it to stories@motherknowsdeath.com or shoot us a message on Instagram. And don't forget to leave us a written 5-star review on Apple.
See you guys. Thank you for listening to Mother Knows Death. As a reminder, my training is as a pathologist assistant. I have a master's level education and specialize in anatomy and pathology education. I am not a doctor, and I have not diagnosed or treated anyone, dead or alive, without the assistance of a licensed medical doctor. This show, my website, and social media accounts are designed to educate and inform people based on my experience working in pathology so they can make healthier decisions regarding their life and well-being. Always remember that science is changing every day, and the opinions expressed in this episode are based on my knowledge of those subjects at the time of publication. If you are having a medical problem, have a medical question, or are having a medical emergency, please contact your physician or visit an urgent care center, emergency room, or hospital. Please rate, review, and subscribe to Mother Knows Death on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, or anywhere you get podcasts. Thanks.